In the final round of Championship fixtures before Christmas, there's an opportunity for an early present for Sheffield United and Leeds. Now, the Blades have a 4-point cushion to third place Burnley, and Leeds just 1 point. But both those sides have on paper reasonably favourable fixtures this weekend, because while the Blades are away at Cardiff City, Chris Wilder's side, and Leeds United are at home to Oxford United, two prospective relegation candidates. Burnley and Sunderland host playoff aspirants Watford and Norwich respectively. So, in theory, there's a greater chance that Burnley and Sunderland drop points, while Sheffield United and Leeds have golden opportunities on paper to extend their leads in that top two. But when has the Championship ever been quite as simple as that? Plenty to delve into on this promotion race in this Championship podcast. Yes, welcome along to our Championship podcast. Do get subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify, because that would help us out a lot here on EFL Debate. For now, delighted to be joined by my lovely co-host, Ollie Mann from Sheffield United Way. Ollie, thanks so much for joining us this evening. I know you've got you've had a busy sort of early evening. So just wondering, first of all, big picture, are we looking at 4 teams competing for 2 automatic promotion spots? Is it the right time to commit to that as an answer?
Yes, it is. I messaged you about this actually in midweek, didn't I, Gab? After Borough had lost at Leeds, I messaged you and said, I'm now officially willing to say that this is a 4-horse race. I think, I'm using 90 points as the barometer. Mm-hmm. In automatic promotion, you need to get 90 points, which means that generally speaking, you need around 2 points per game. Borough, Blackburn, they've just fallen too far behind that 2 points per game run that they have to go on. Like, I think I calculated the other day that if Middlesbroughs are going to get 90 points, they have to get something like 2.3 points a game, matching Reading's all-time Championship record. Sustaining that for as long as they've got to sustain it for, I just don't think it's possible. So I think we're down to 4 teams. It's going to be 2 from those 4: Leeds, United, Burnley, Sunderland.
Unless it's less than 90 points is the one question, whether you think...
Unless it's less than 90 points.
Yeah, that's probably the one thing that might tip it into Middlesbrough's favour. And I think Middlesbrough would probably be the only team where you would say there's the slightest glimmer. But even then, I think they've taken too long to find that clinical edge in front of goal, and they've been a bit inconsistent in that area, despite being a brilliant side in other respects. So really excited about Middlesbrough this season, but I think
I agree. On their day, I've looked at this and I've said I've been one of Middlesbrough's biggest cheerleaders, really. To the point that I've looked quite stupid in a lot of conversations. I think they're brilliant. I really do. I think they're one of, I think if we look at performance level, not results, not grinding it out, not all of that kind of stuff, but just on performance level, I think Borough are one of the best 2 teams in the league. I think their top level of performance is only bettered by Leeds. I think they're the only team who are 100% are better than Borough. The problem for me is that Borough only play at 100% every 3rd game. And so there's too many times where when they turn up and play at 50%, they can't grind it out. They can't just take it. Like United at the weekend, we were awful against Plymouth.
Yeah.
Genuinely, Plymouth were the better team. Will feel so hard done to that they left Bramall Lane with nothing. But when we weren't good enough, when we weren't putting in the right performance level, we just don't concede goals. And that is enough to keep getting points. And I just don't think Borough can do that.
Ollie, I think a really big theme that I'm expecting to come up in our conversations this evening is key players looking a little bit jaded. I'm sure we'll speak to Jonny, a Sunderland fan, in a few minutes' time, and talking about 1 or 2 Sunderland players who look a little bit jaded at times and possibly in need of a rest. And I think possibly especially the case with Gus Harmer for Sheffield United, where I actually watched the extended highlights earlier, and there was a moment where I'm pretty sure was it out of possession? Sam McCallum was basically becoming the left midfielder, and Gus Harmer was literally running backwards. It didn't even look like he was chasing a man back or anything like that. It was like he was literally conserving his energy. And it seems like this is a really interesting dilemma for Sheffield United, especially with quite limited squad depth. To what extent do you say get your best players on the pitch because they can produce match-winning moments like Harmer did for the first goal against Plymouth Argyle, brilliant strike? And to what extent do you say, actually, we've got to manage our best players and we've got to keep them fresh for the duration?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, and it's a problem that United are going to face more and more. And, you know, Wilder in his interview after the game did reflect, you know, maybe I should have done more changes. Maybe I should have rotated the squad more because we looked tired. We just looked knackered from start to finish. It looked like the number of games were catching up to us. Harmer, you know, towards the end of the game, he did tire. But to be fair to him, for 50 minutes was outstanding. He was running, he was charging. Like you say, he scored a fantastic goal. So there's very much an argument that if you don't play Gus Harmer, we don't beat Plymouth at the weekend because it was his moment that really made the difference. So that's the argument for why you have him on the pitch. Then you have the argument for why you don't. Vinny Souza, I would say, is Sheffield United's most important player. Gus Harmer might be the best player in the league, but I think Vinny Souza is our most important player because of how we play and what he brings to the squad. He's been injured for a while. Like he pulled his hamstring in the 5th minute against Sunderland weeks ago. And he battled through 90 minutes, limping for quite a lot of it. And we were all sat in the crowd saying he's going to have to go off because he just can't move. He battled through that game. He battled through the next one. And then in the next one against Millwall, he has to go off injured. And he's missed this one. He missed it against Millwall. We need somebody to rotate. There should have been a moment where we said he can't play this one because he's not fit enough. But we can't do it because we've not got the depth behind him. And that's, we've seen both sides of it. Gus Harmer, we asked him to battle through being tired, scored the winner, got us 3 points. Vinny Souza, we asked him to do it, got injured and has missed 2 games now. Is he going to miss any more? I don't know. But it's really difficult for us at the minute.
Certainly is. I was kind of having a look at Sheffield United's formation, Ollie, and the out of possession shape. Maybe watching 90 minutes, you'll be able to give more insight to this. For me, it looks actually like a 5-3-1-1 out of possession, especially when defending, the opposition have the ball in your half. Because to my eyes, I think Alfie Gilchrist is a lot closer to Harry Souttar and Jack Robinson than Harrison Burrows is as a left back, but even though on paper, if we're saying it's a back 4, it's Gilchrist as a right back and Burrows as a left back. And actually, to me, it looks as if out of possession, Raksaki drops very deep, and obviously Harmer comes in very narrow. So interesting, although it is a back 4 for Sheffield United, it feels a bit more like a 4-3 hybrid.
Yeah, I don't want to use the term inverted fullback. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to do it. But that's almost the role that Alfie Gilchrist plays because, we've got so much width on that left-hand side with the way that Burrows goes forward. It really does create so much space down the left and Burrows stays wide at all times. Even defensively, he stays wide out of possession. He always pushes his winger to try and get them. If they're going around him, they have to go around the outside effectively because he's always pushing them out towards the byline. Whereas Gilchrist, I think his natural position is a centre-half. I think that's where long-term in his career, I think he will play as a centre-half. I think that's what comes to him naturally. I think he always wants to be coming inside. And so, you do see that creeping in. Now, I think one of the risks of that, of course, is that when we played West Brom a couple of weeks ago, they overloaded that. They recognised that flaw in our system. They recognised that we were going to try and sit in. And they just overloaded down the right. And so they always had 2 players coming down the right, which meant they'd always got space. So however we played, they'd always got one man free on the right-hand side. He was whipping in crosses. He was causing us all kinds of problems. And so there's
Sorry, do you mean on their right-hand side or yours?
So they were coming down our right-hand side, And so that causes a lot of problems because Raksaki, I love him. He's a good player. He's not that defensively minded, though. He's not a defender. And so we are asking him to do a lot of work out of possession. We're asking him to really cover a lot coming down the sort of opposition wing. And I do wonder if that takes away from the impact he's had going forwards in recent weeks because he'd really got himself into a purple patch of form, but that's died away a little bit. And I think it is just because he looks tired, because he's constantly having to chase back. It also means he's then receiving the ball too deep. When he gets the ball, he's receiving it in United's half or around the halfway line. And that's just not where he's hurting teams. So it does bring a lot to us defensively in terms of the way that we're trying to bring that shape in Gilchrist narrowing the penalty area, making sure that we've got extra bodies in there so we're not getting hurt through crosses into the box. We're not getting hurt by teams having too much space or time, but we are getting hurt because we can't get out quite the way that we would hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any players, Ollie, who you feel haven't maybe had the opportunities that they would have liked so far this season, but you feel like they can bring a freshness to this side and maybe rejuvenate things a little bit?
No.
No, really?
Ultimately, no. I just don't think we've got any depth in the squad that hasn't already been used. I think we are burning everybody. I think the player who will probably feel he deserves more time on the pitch is Sam McCallum. He is the one player who every time he comes off the bench really impresses. I cannot believe the leap on the man. He jumps like Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, he jumps and his legs are in line with the defender's head. And I don't understand how he gets that high. And so he probably is the only one who I think we probably would want on the pitch more than he's currently getting. I think everybody else is contributing so effectively in the squad. I think there are players like Jamie Shackleton. There are players like, Femi Siriki started getting himself into a starting position. He started having a little bit more time before he got injured. But there's nobody on the bench who is screaming out to say, I should be a starter and deserve more time. Maybe Tom Davies as he gets fit. I'm really excited for his sort of comeback.
Oh, it was a lovely moment for him the other week, wasn't it? After such a long time out on the sidelines.
Yeah, it was incredible. Honestly, I always said this as I was leaving the ground. That's what happens in Football Manager. You have a player who's out injured for 3 years. You put them on, they score, and you get the line along the bottom. After so long out, he's come back and got a goal on his return. It's amazing. And it just felt like that. It felt like a fantastic story in a massive game. And I really want him to be able to kick on this season. So, yeah, maybe there's Davis and maybe there's McCallum. But for the most part, I think the squad that we've got is being used and pushed really to its limits.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? I think you mentioned to me earlier, Ollie, that there's some talk about some movements in terms of the off-field situation at the club. Can you shed a little bit of light on that for us?
Yeah, so United have been in the process of being taken over since Jesus times, I think. It feels like it's dragged on that long anyway. Obviously,
You must be the oldest club in the world then, Ollie.
Yeah, I didn't know if you know this, Gab, but we're older than time itself because that's when we first received the offer from these Americans to try and buy the club. But yeah, it just feels like it's dragged on for ages. But we got a report earlier today from a prominent local journalist, works for BBC Radio Sheffield, Rob Staton, and he was saying that the takeover has been signed, that the deal is just waiting to be announced. Now, there's been contrasting reports come out since. There's been some suggestion that despite the progress and the breakthroughs, we're still a few days, maybe weeks away from it being officially announced. But yes, it sounds as though before January, our off-field takeover rumblings will all be finished and the new ownership will be ready to take us forward for the rest of the season. So fingers crossed, that might be a chapter that's finally coming to an end because it's rumbled on way too long.
Yes, I'm a little bit reluctant to share quite the level of sort of triumphalism, for whatever the word is, because I'm always a little bit cautious with new people coming into a football club. You don't quite know who they are, what their intentions are going to be. I think we have to urge an element of caution at least.
There's two sides to that, I think, because I think my triumphalism or my excitement is that it's over one way or the other. I just don't want to have every 3 weeks a conversation about, oh, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Sure. It needs to come to a conclusion, whether for the Prince to keep the club or for the new owners to take the club. We just need this saga to come to an end. So that's the reason for the excitement. There's two worries. So there's the worry that why is it taken this long? Has it taken this long because these are a group of worrisome fellows who might be trying to buy the club for nefarious means? I hope not. I don't have any control over that, whether they do or they don't. So I have to just hope that they're not and hopefully celebrate them coming in. The second worry, which I hadn't considered, but it came up on a podcast I was listening to a few weeks ago. If the Premier League's relegation zone stays the same as it is and United's takeover goes through, then for the first time ever, as I understand it, there will be a majority share of American owners in the Premier League. They'll have got to the 14 lucky number.
Jesus.
So any future votes on the Premier League, the Americans, if they group together, would be able to win the vote just on their own without needing anybody else. And so obviously there are wider concerns for football. There's definite concerns for what it might mean for United. But I think we just have to be excited and celebrate the fact that whatever happens, we'll know what the future's going to be. Because going into January with an owner who's looking to sell, owners who are looking to buy, but no agreement, would have left us just not able to complete building the squad the way that we need to.
Absolutely, and as much as I think there can be a sort of uncertainty perhaps about American owners in English football, I also think that there have been some very good ones, like the Coigs at Wickham. So it really does vary
as well. People laugh at it, but I'd be delighted if we got owners like Birmingham's. People will laugh because they say, "Oh, they got relegated. They made a ridiculous decision putting Rooney in." But
sure.
Look at what they're doing now, but not even that. Look at what they're doing for the city. That's what I love my city. I'm not going to pretend I don't. I've lived here all my life. I love it. I work in town, but town's a mess. Like if someone was going to come in and genuinely invest, not just in United, but in the city, that'd be transformative for so many people. So we have to hope that we're getting that kind of investment and we're not getting the other kind, which unfortunately we do see a bit too often.
Absolutely. Delighted to be joined now by Jonny from the Roker Report on Sunderland. Good evening, Jonny. Good to see you as always. I think we've been talking so far about Sheffield United having a few key players looking a little bit jaded and in need of a rest, and I'm wondering if that's a familiar theme for you as a Sunderland fan.
Yeah, well, it's a mixture, I think, between players who need a rest and players who are getting an enforced rest in the form of injuries. We've got Romain Mundle still absent. Tommy Watson picked up an injury. So then you've got that kind of double-pronged issue of obviously players, playing a lot of football, and particularly young players, Chris Rigg, Joe Bellingham, they're not necessarily physically built up to the rigors of 46-game, championship seasons in the way that somebody who's 25, 26, 27 is much more likely to be. So, yeah, I think there's definitely players who need a rest. And I think you could see that this week. We did get 7 points from the 3 games, but I think we went behind in every game. And I think that's both a symptom of a team who's maybe lacking a little bit of fluency due to obviously build up of games. And then also it takes a lot out of you, I think, when you've got to keep coming from behind. If you're not setting the pace in a game, it's very, very easy to end up, chasing the ball too much. Not too much within the context of the game, but if you're constantly chasing and constantly coming back and digging deep, then I think, that adds up pretty quickly. And we're at a position now where we need to start, putting teams to the sword a little bit, to give ourselves that chance to get a rest in games and then between games, instead of having to constantly be at 100 mile an hour to try and make up for the mistakes that we've already made in the first, 20, 30 minutes of a game. So, yeah, definite problem.
At what point do I need to apologise to you, Jonny? Because we absolutely daylight robbered you at Bramall Lane, didn't we? I thought it was such an impressive performance, but I was really sad to hear about Watson's injury, because I really felt as though he'd stepped up to the plate in Mundle's absence, and he really did feel as though, I thought he was great at Bramall Lane. I thought he was obviously shining. He got his 2 goals, wasn't it? Was it last weekend? So it's a real shame that he's picked up the injury when he had, because such a young player really felt like he was ready to kick on.
Yeah, well, I wondered how long it would take you to bring up the match at Bramall Lane. So well done for holding back for one answer. I'll give you that. Yeah, no, I mean, that was a very frustrating evening for Sunderland fans, because I think it is fair to say that we possibly were the better side overall. Obviously missed the penalty save, but I think it's not the best feeling when you play that well and have the penalty come away with nothing. But Tommy Watson, I thought, was superb that evening. I think that was his sort of first real standout performance where you kind of felt, okay, he's arrived now. It's because obviously it's a tough place to go. I mean, Sheffield United are flying, at or near the top of the league after this many games. It's quite obviously a tough place to go and play football. So for such a young lad to come in and do so well, Obviously unfortunate to come away with nothing in terms of points in the end. But yeah, he played really well there. He got the couple of goals last weekend as well. So it is a shame because he did look like he was really starting to build on it and put a bit of a run together. So and particularly with it being he was already the backup option to Mundle, who himself is injured. So, when you've got one and then you get another, and then, you're sort of scratching your head thinking like, a few weeks ago we were stocked with too many wingers. We didn't know what to do with them. And then now we're scrabbling round and the cupboard looks a little bit bare. So, that's been a big issue. Just, injuries to the wrong players at the wrong times. I know there's never a good time for somebody to get injured, but when you're already down to your reinforcements, and then they're the ones going down in battle. It's never a good feeling. But it's good that he's got the performances under his belt, because I think that'll do him the world of good when he does come back as well. Because you can have all the ability in the world and be playing lights out for the under-21s or whatever, but until you've started to build a body of work, I feel like it's quite easy to fade and struggle to impose yourself on games. So, fingers crossed that he sort of carries on where he left off when he comes back. But it's just a shame that's going to be, 8-week break over the busiest time of the season. It's not the most ideal, but we'll deal with it.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you about, I guess the role of Dan Neil for Sunderland, because I think there's a feeling that as much as he's done brilliantly in this deeper role to accommodate the likes of Rigg and Job for Sunderland, he would probably benefit from being 10 yards further up the pitch at times. And I think we saw a sort of reminder of that in that lovely strike at Swansea to level the scores. So I'm just wondering, do you think there's a world where I'm not quite sure when Alan Brown returns, but could Brown take on that deeper midfield role and maybe allow Dan Neil to go back to being that sort of number 8, if you like?
Yeah, well, that's definitely something that you're right, has become clear that, or not become clear, but like you say, a timely reminder that, Dan Neil, when he is operating further up the pitch, he's got those kind of goals in his locker. He's able to contribute really positively going forward. And I do think, to his credit, that even while he is still playing in this sort of deeper number 6 role, over the last few weeks in particular, I think he's really stepped up, kind of driving the whole team forward from that base of the midfield. I think is that's a very, very difficult skill. The holding midfield has become something of a sort of fashionable position at the minute. You just need to look at how much Man City have missed Rodri since he got injured to see that, obviously the levels of quality are astronomically different, but the tactical role of that position, it is key. And I do think that I think I said this to you, a few months ago when I was on, I think we do lose something of Dan Neil when he's sitting deep like that, because it just isn't his natural game. And I think,
but I also, Jonny, I completely agree with you. But I also really like the way that he's kind of embraced, that sort of role, and I think that shows a real maturity, especially being a young captain as well. At 23, I think that's testament to his character.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I do think the armband maybe has weighed a little heavily on him at times this season, particularly early on. I think it's just very difficult when, I think if you're an academy graduate who gets the armband and that effectively makes you undroppable in an important area of the pitch, then it's very, very easy for you to become the target of a lot of criticism. And I think at times it's been fair as well, because he has underperformed compared to what we know he's capable of. But like I say, the last few weeks he's been getting back to his sort of usual self, I think. In terms of who could fill that role in his stead, we signed Salis Abdul Samed on loan in the summer, who, that is his position, but he's been injured the entire season. So he's not even been able to get a single minute of football. So that's a potential option, but a big unknown, and it is risky, I think, to drop somebody into a key role on the pitch with basically no time spent on the pitch with his teammates and not fit. Alan Brown is somebody I think who could play there. Again, it's just about getting him back fit. I don't think he's supposed to be out for a ridiculous amount of time, but I think he got a fracture in his leg, which is what forced him off, and he's been out ever since. But yeah, I think we do need to find an answer to that position, because I think Dan Neil is more than serviceable there, but I think you lose something from a player with more of a natural positional sense for that area of the pitch, as well as losing something from Neil that he could give you further forward. So yeah, I mean, I would totally agree that that's an area that we need to focus on and potentially think about in January.
Yeah, I think midfield will partly be solved by returnees from injuries, depending on the timescales of that. So hopefully that can help you out. I guess one area that probably is going to be quite a big one in January as well is those wide positions, because again, Patrick Roberts, a bit like Chris Rigg or even Joe Bellingham, is one who has looked maybe a little bit jaded of late and sort of fatigued through playing so many games, and whether he's somebody who could benefit from being kept fresh and, you know, dropped for the odd game, but then coming off the bench, or, you know, somebody to rotate with him, because when you've got Mundell injured and now you've got Tommy Watson injured and Jack Clark's gone, you may be a little bit short in terms of those wide options.
Yeah, and it's not just, again, it's a double issue where it's not just the fact that you've got the likes of Patrick Roberts, who I think he definitely would benefit from some more rotation and a little bit of sort of horses for courses in terms of when does he play. You know, I think there are certain teams we'll play against where a player like Roberts really suits the game and we can really get the best out of them. There are going to be other games, I'm thinking of like games we've already played, say Luton away, real tough battling games. I think sometimes you need something a little bit different. So yeah, I think we need more options just in terms of styles of play and people who can do different jobs there. But then the other knock-on effect is you end up, you know, maybe Wilson Isidore has to be shunted out wide. We've seen Eliza Mayenda playing out wide over the last few games. And
who's better suited to playing wide, do you think, Mayenda or Isidore?
It's a tricky question, that, because I think if you combined half of each of them, you'd have a brilliant championship winger. Because Mayenda, despite his size, and he looks a bit ungainly, he's deceptively very good at beating people. He's really, really good at like knocking the ball, finding a bit of space, and he's physically imposing enough, and he's got enough pace about him that he can do that. But he hasn't got the final ball of a winger, put it that way. You know, he's not necessarily the most composed once he gets into that position. Whereas Isidore, I think, is a lot more cultured, and he's maybe he's the more traditional option to put out there out of the two in terms of the profile. But I don't think he's as direct. I think Mayenda, when he gets the ball, his first thought is just get forward, whether it's down the line, cut inside, doesn't matter what, he wants to go that way. Whereas I think Isidore is a bit more comfortable playing in tight areas, but then you sacrifice a bit of that direct running, which means then you're struggling to get balls into the forward. And then by dint of the fact that Isidore's out wide, it means he's not in the box to try and finish off the chances. Yeah. So personally, if I had to pick one of them, I'm probably going to go Mayenda. Because I do think there's a much better player in Mayenda than people give him credit for. But the ideal option is neither of the above, and either sign somebody else or stop losing wingers to 8-week injuries would be the great option.
That would be great. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, I mean, I think Isidore's probably the best finisher at the club, so you kind of ideally you want him centrally getting on the end of things. So interesting dilemma, I think, for Regis Lebris, and hopefully it's one he won't have to make if he can make the right additions. Ollie, how are you feeling about sort of weighing up Sunderland's automatic promotion prospects against that of Burnley, Sheffield United and Leeds?
Right up there. They're, I think, probably the best team that Leeds battered us. They're the second best team we've played because I thought they were so impressive the way they came to Bramall Lane, really took the game to us. You know, we're in the middle of this mad run of not conceding goals, and Sunderland should have scored. Like, ultimately, that's where we landed. And I think their performance level is really high. I think the difficulty is that you look at this sort of run of form that they're currently in. I've just been looking at their last 9 games, and I think they've not scored in 4 and have drawn 6. And it's that kind of thing where you need to look at when the chips are down and it does get into those difficult positions, can they win those games 1-0? Like away at Preston, can they just take a chance, create a chance to win the game? And that, for me, is the only thing holding them back at the minute. I think performance-wise, they're definitely right up there. I would be very shocked if they don't stay the course. I think we'll still be talking about Sunderland come the end of April as being right in this conversation for trying to get there. For me, they just need to find a way to get over the line in some of these games where it's been a little bit tough. And that's going to be the difference. Because I think it is going to be as tight as looking at games like Preston and thinking, should we have just took that 1-0, gone home with a slightly, we could be annoyed about the performance, we can be frustrated at how it's gone, but win the game anyway and be annoyed looking back rather than being annoyed thinking, oh, we've let it go.
Yeah, I mean, just to jump in, I mean, basically totally agree with every word of that. I think we've already had too many, possibly, of the kind of game where you think, could be looking back at that one at the end of the season and thinking one's got away there. I'm thinking, 2-0 up at home to Coventry at half-time, end up drawing 2-2. I'm thinking 1-0 up away at Millwall. For some reason, decided
90+6, was it, Jonny?
Chuck 7 men forward into the Millwall half when you're defending a lead in injury time. Like that is not the game management of a team that wins automatic promotion. And you can iron it out to a degree, and you can almost get away with it if it's once or twice. I think the frequency of those games that we've already seen, that's my worry. Because I think on our day, I think we can beat anyone. I think we have shown that.
But Jonny, I would also make the point that I think when everyone's fit and available, and fresh and all the rest of it, I think Sunderland are at least as good as Sheffield United, if not slightly better.
Just to come in here, because I've got do you want to know I'll tell you my most controversial opinion.
Go on.
Hit us.
Sunderland are better suited to the Premier League than we are. If we were to get promoted, we need to do a lot of work. Whereas I think Sunderland and Leeds would be better suited to the step up. And the reason I say that is that United, what we've done so effectively this season is when we've had those games we've just been talking about, those frustrating performances that aren't good enough, we've won the game 1-0. That's just what we've done consistently all season. That is perfectly suited to the Championship, to getting promoted.
Yeah.
That doesn't help you in the Premier League because you can't play Liverpool at home and have an off day. You don't win that game 1-0. You have to be at your top level all the time to get points, to be competitive, to win games.
But the other point,
I don't think we've been at our top level once all season yet. I genuinely don't think anyone who's watched United would say, oh, they were brilliant today. Because what we've done is we've won tight games of football because of an unbelievable defence and some real quality up front. But we've not dominated many games. We've not battered anybody. We just win. And I worry that we'll see the same problem. Whereas the teams like Leeds, like Sunderland, if you've got a top level, which is competitive, you think, right, if we've hit that top level 50% of our games this season, hit them 50% of games in the Premier League, you'll maybe only win 4, 5, 6. But that's enough. We've not hit ours yet. And so would we have won any? Well, we might beat the teams that go up with us, but that's because we've got the quality. We're winning games on quality of player, not on domination or battering teams. And that's, for me, what I'm worried about. Because I'm confident with where we are this season. I'm worried about where we might be next.
No, I think you make a fantastic point there, Ollie. I also think that while Sunderland might be 5 points short of Sheffield United now, and they've drawn those games, I think Sunderland have sort of a bit more entitled to drop points by drawing games because they've had times where they've been the injuries have been that bad. Whereas I think Sheffield United have maybe been a bit more fortuitous on the injury front, which has helped. Do you not think that? I suppose with our blaster and maybe the midfield.
I mean, in the last few weeks, we've been missing Tyrese Campbell, Kiefer Moore, Ollie Arblaster, Vinny Souza. Suter's missed some, Manel's missed some. Sariki's currently out injured. Rhian Brewster's missed 2 months.
Okay.
We've not been, I think even Harmer's missed a couple. Like, we've not been that lucky.
Yeah, all right, yeah, fair play.
Just to tag onto that as well, like from a Sunderland point of view, something that we've kind of been we've almost argued internally about it a lot, where it's like, okay, we've been on this run, like you said, Ollie, you know, out of our last however many games, I mean, you can go back even further than the 9, I think, you know, a lot of draws, and not too many defeats, maybe not enough wins. And you look at that run and you think, okay, if this is our bad patch and it's done and it's out the way, you're absolutely laughing, like completely happy with that, because we've had the injuries, we've had some suspension, you know, Job missed 3.5 games when he got his red card, stuff like that. If you can, when you're weakened through injuries and suspension, still not really lose games, then brilliant. The problem is, if we then have another run like that in the second half of the season, maybe we don't even draw that many games. Maybe they start turning into 1-0 losses, 2-1 defeats, whatever it might be. And I mean, this sounds ridiculously simplistic when you say it like that. It's like, you know, if you win games instead of drawing them or losing them, then you tend to do well in the league. But if this is our bad patch and it's out the way, then I'd think, okay, we have a serious chance of top 2. My worry is I could see, through a confluence of factors, a run like this happening again come March, even come April. And that's what kills your chances of autos, because you need to not be a streaky team. I think if you can help it, you need to be consistent. And if you're streaking too much, you know, one way or the other, I don't think it's necessarily what helps you. But you know,
I think if your worst, if you can have your worst point and you're still ticking off points, by getting a draw, you know, I think that's okay, because you know there's times last season when the bar was extremely high for automatic promotion. Like Leeds had a spell where they were losing it. Like there was definitely a spell where 2 or 3 of the contenders were losing every week. It felt like, whereas I think if you're drawing a few games then and without massively under strength, then I think that can be a positive.
Yeah.
Jonny, great to get your insight on Sunderland. So thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure as always, lads. Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
It's all right.
I'll have to make sure I get my Sheffield United injury knowledge right in future weeks. Sorry, you're on mute, Ollie.
Rookie. Absolute rookie. Don't even deserve to make my point. Introduce the next guy.
All right, well, delighted to be joined now by Scott Worrall of Leeds United. How are you, Scott?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, mate. I've been off a bit ill last week, but yeah, not too bad this week. And
glad you've been on the mend. Just in terms of Leeds United's season so far, I think Elland Road is quickly becoming established as a very difficult place to go, and I imagine that you're going to get pretty close to maximum points at Elland Road this season. I think probably win 18 or 19 of your games there, so certainly no problems there. I guess the challenge is to try and tick over a few more points away from that corner of West Yorkshire.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think we've won 8 of our last 8 at home now. The slight worry about that, which I'll probably get onto in a second, is that I don't think you're going to keep winning. You're not going to win your next 8. I don't think you're not going to win 16 on the trot at home. But that, obviously, like you mentioned, our issue is our away form. I think we've won 1 in 7 now away from home, and it's just a comical of errors. And the sort of the difference in performances between home and away are just absolutely there to see, and the results show. Because I think you can maybe talk about, I think you can have the odd game when you go away from home and it don't go well for you. That happens. We're not, they're all humans. We get that. I'm not expecting us to go away to every ground in the league and win 4-0 or anything like that. But I think when you're winning 1 in 7, I think that's quite a statement of the problem now. I mean, the Sunderland game, how long was that ago now? It's got to be months ago. And we've won 1 away from home since then. And the game we won away from home was a 4-3 against Swansea, which, to be fair, I was loving it when Nonto scored in the 93rd minute to win the game. But is that a realistic way to win away from home, conceding 3 goals? I'm not so sure. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right with your evaluation there.
And there's a feeling from Leeds United. Well, I think there's 3 sort of components to this that I can see away from home. One is obviously Meslier hasn't done himself any favours in terms of if you want your goalkeeper to have a man of the match performance away from home, and you only takes a moment of quality to then win it. We've not seen that enough to sort of put it kindly from Meslier's point of view. possibly a bit of a nasty, ruthless streak missing. Maybe Ampadu can come back and solve that. But then also some question marks in those central attacking positions. So which of those, I'm not expecting you to answer all three of those points, but which of those kind of stands out to you as the biggest one that's front and centre for you right now?
Well, I think the keeper's definitely an issue. I think in them 7 games, we've gone 1-0 down in 1-0 down away from home in 6 of them. And the only one we didn't go 1-0 down, and we actually drew the game 0-0 anyway. So we didn't exactly win that game either. So every single game away from home, without that we've sort of got points in, basically, besides the 0-0 draw, we've gone 1-0 down in. And that comes from a poor keeper. You just have to look at sort of what Sheffield United did in the summer, where they brought in Cooper, and he's been one of the best keepers, if not the best keeper in the league this season. And I think that's what we're competing against in terms of, because I think our defences line up quite nicely compared to Sheffield United's, but I think that the main difference there is the goalkeeper. I mean, there's just no way in a million years Cooper doesn't save that at the weekend. And that for me has been an underlying thing all season. I mean, I would even.
And then Matteo Joseph would have scored the winner theoretically.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, but it's not just that; it's the game state that it creates. Because when you go 1-0 down in a game, most of the time the sort of pattern of play that then we've seen is that the opposition going to a low block, and then we're trying to break them down, and then the home crowd are getting up, and then it becomes a massive nightmare, and we basically can't do it. And we've seen that repetitive all the way through the season. I think what Sheffield United are doing so well, if you look at their away form compared to ours, is they're going 1-0 up in games, and then it sets the game state then from then on. You look at their Millwall game, we lost away at Millwall about a month ago now. They obviously went there midweek and won the game 1-0. I don't think it was pretty by any accounts, but that's not how you win away from home sometimes in the Championship. I think that's an issue. I think the number 10's a problem. But the annoying thing about number 10 is I think we're sort of lacking a creation from the manager in terms of personnel to put there. I don't think it has to be Brendan Aronson every single week. We've got a tons of talent in attacking areas. I think we've got 4 of the best wingers in the division. All at the same team, and I think.
Scott, can Nonto play as a 10? Do you think?
Look, I think even under Marsh in the Premier League, he was playing in number 10 at times. So I think there's definitely scope to do that. And also the other thing with Nonto is he's not particularly playing that well out wide. So maybe you'd say, well, he shouldn't play in the middle then at all and should just be out of the team. But maybe try him in a different position. But I think one thing that we've always found with Farke is that he's not someone who's going to. Do you know when you 1-0 down at half time and you've played terrible, and sometimes the manager will complete tweak, change the system, and it'll all change the whole complexion of the game. We saw it in the Bielsa all the time, but that's what top managers do. Farke would never do that. Farke, with 1-0 down at half time, we would come out with the same 11. He'd say after the game that, I'll give him the chance to correct it, and it's the set that you can have that once, but having that every single away game is not exactly a solution. I think Nonto in the 10 would be a nice option. Potentially Ramazani in the 10, I think, would be a nice option.
I like Ramazani.
I think even Solomon in the 10 potentially could be an option as well. Obviously, James in the 10, I think, would be a nightmare. But them 3 definitely for sure could be an option in there. Or even moving Joe Rothwell further forward. I know when he was at Blackburn, he played in the more advanced role at times as well. So there is scope to do things with the squad that we have, but. We've got a manager who seems to, for me, it's very simple. It seems quite simplistic in what he does, and he doesn't seem to have that creation that maybe other managers do.
I think the number 10 and the number 9 positions have been sort of questioned denied about for Leeds United over the last 18 months. I also feel like without Ampadu, and I'm really curious to see what sort of impact he can have, the number 6 position actually, because I actually think of Ao Tanaka and Joe Rothwell as more like 8s than 6s. And I think the problem that you have with that is I think there can sometimes be a bit more of a gap between the centre halves and your midfielders, because Rothwell and Tanaka are both wired to push forward and contribute further forward as opposed to collecting the ball off the defence. But I think the defence need a bit more support, maybe away from home, because opponents tend to be more aggressive. So therefore you've got less time on the ball as a centre half than you might have at Elland Road. And that's where I think the number 6 position becomes quite important for Leeds. So for me, I think Ethan Ampadu's return, or you've been linked with Dario Asugo, I think on loan from Sporting in January as well. Yeah,
but I mean, potentially. To be honest with you, I think our midfield's okay. I think that's absolutely fine. We've gone to grounds in the league early in the season. Like I went to Sunderland with Rothwell and Tanaka early days with them too, and I thought we were the better team in that game. And that's one of the more tricky away grounds to go in the league, obviously, with their home form where they are in the division, and the midfield you're actually coming up against in that Sunderland team. I think it's one of the best in the league as well. My feeling actually is that it might be a controversial take in the Leeds fan base, but I don't think Ampadu's going to make much of a difference. In fact,
really,
I don't think he will, because I don't think that's where our issue is coming from. Actually, the holding midfield position. I think actually our issue in defence is not that we're giving up loads of chances, because we're not. If you look at our XG numbers and chances against us, we're not one of the teams that are giving up loads of chances. In fact, we're one of the best in the whole division.
But Scott, are Rothwell or Tanaka inclined to collect the ball off the defence and give them a bit of help? Because I don't see that they are.
Well, I think they both can pick the ball off the centre half. To be honest, I genuinely don't see that as the issue. And even if you look at the goal at the weekend, it wasn't because of the midfield being poor. It was that Bogle didn't run back in the sort of the manner, in the way that you'd expect him to, and obviously Meslier threw it in his own net. I think one that as I said, all of us in this room would have saved for sure. So as I said, I actually don't think we're conceding we're conceding too many goals. I think that's fair. And you look at the other teams like the likes of Burnley and Sheffield United, and their defensive records are miles better. But actually, on a data point, they're not. And then again, but it's because their keepers are just better than ours. That's generally how I feel about it. I think Sheffield United would have beat I think we'd have had Cooper in goal. I think we'd be on way more points. I think we'd probably have at least 5 more, probably more points than we have. But that's probably my difference to take. But there's no doubt. Look, even if your keeper's poor, which I think ours is, there's no doubt that he's not going to cost us in all of our last 6 out of 7 away games where we're not winning, is it? So potentially, I think Ampadu, in terms of, especially when you're winning a game away from home, when you go into a tricky away ground, someone to bring on like that could be a massive help. But again, we've got like Joshua Gilavogi that we brought in, who can do that role a bit as well. So I'm not as inclined to think that Ampadu is going to fix our issues, unfortunately, which is where I'm sort of more concerned about the long term of our away form, to be honest.
I think it's interesting. I think that point on the keeper is really important, though, because I do think, you look at United and Burnley, and Trafford and Cooper are both in the top 5 XG prevented this season. They're both right up there, obviously contributing. And Meslier right down, I think he's 18th, and he's actually conceded more than you would expect. And there's clearly something there. I think back, you referenced the Sunderland game where you've gone away to Sunderland, fantastic performance, you've got the game won. And then he's throwing them away in the last minute. And do you think the club will do something about that in January? Or do you think it is just a case of all their eggs are still in Mellier's basket? Because it's been 3 or 4 seasons now when everyone's known that he was potentially going to be a problem.
Yeah, it's to be honest with you, as a fan, I think some of the fans have chosen different routes, just to back him regardless. But as someone who's wanted Meslier replaced for years now, it's probably seeing him every week in the net is probably one of the most infuriating things. And I've got to the point with him where even when he doesn't make mistakes, his whole presence is just frustrating to me because of the amount of errors he's made over his time at Leeds United. But my genuine feeling is that he will not be replaced, because you only have to look back to summer where he's been made vice captain of the team, which makes me think that, again, you wouldn't make someone vice captain that you consider shipping out. I think, to be honest, the way I look at it now, and again, this is probably unpopular in the Leeds fan base, is that we've got a keeper in Carl Darlow. For me, it's at Championship level, is not that bad. And Hull, I think we're after him in the summer. I think another few Championship teams are after him in the summer. He also had a really good time at Hull. Basically the year before we bought him from Christmas onwards, when he was on loan at Hull. And why he can't get a sniff and don't ever get to play, I don't know, that frustrates me, to be honest. And every week when I used to do, I hadn't uploaded for a while actually, but when I used to do videos and my previews, I always used to put Darlow in goal, and people would comment saying, "Why are you putting Darlow in goal?" Because I think he's the better keeper. That's why. And yes, maybe his kicking isn't as good as Meslier, and that's probably why we don't pick him. But my opinion is that Mellier's kicking isn't good anyway, so we're not exactly losing anything. And I think the presence that Darlow gives you, I think he grab more crosses than Darlow. I think he command his area better than Darlow, and fundamentally, I think he may save more shots than Meslier as well. So I think the solution's probably, I don't think we need to go and buy someone. I don't think he's the best keeper in the league by any means, Darlow, but I think he's definitely more of a solution than Meslier is, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, just very quickly, because we do want to bring in Natalie Bromley in a moment, but if we had to push you for an answer, give me a percentage of how confident you are that Leeds United make the top 2 this season.
Well, at the start of the season, I'd been really high, but I think I can't look past our away form, and I think our home form can't continue at the same breath. So I'm at 50-50 at the moment, to be honest.
50-50? Wow, I was expecting you to be a bit more bullish than that.
No, because it's such a long time now away from home where we've struggled that I just can't. I can't say we can get promoted by being good in half your games. I think you've got to be good in 70-80% of your games, not half of them. So, and Sheffield United don't sound like they're slowing down. I think the only benefit this year is compared to last year is that I don't think the other teams are quite as good potentially, and the points do back that up in fairness.
So very important then for Daniel Farke to find that formula away from home. Let's hope he can do that. Scott, thanks so much for your insight on Leeds United this evening. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks
for having me. See you later.
Cheers.
Bye.
We're delighted to be joined now by Natalie Bromley of the No Name Never podcast on Burnley. Hello. Just wondering, wondering how you're feeling about Burnley's defensive resolve that they've shown so far this season.
Well, yeah, I mean, how can you be anything other than delighted with that? Up until this week, we'd only conceded 6 goals. We've conceded twice this week. So obviously, Norwich took just 64 seconds to breach that defence. But I think if I may be so bold as to suggest that I don't think it's necessarily just that we're an amazing defence. I think that the league, generally speaking, is struggling for goals this year. I think a lot of sides outside the top teams in the division are missing that 15, 20 goal a year prolific striker that you need in the Championship. I think I'm hearing this complaint from a lot of sides, and certainly a lot of the sides that have come to us, particularly at Turf, they're not showing any desire to score goals. People are just coming to games and just settling for points, just trying to play very cute football and maybe just get the odd goal on. It's become a 1-0 game as a Championship this season for some reason. That said, what we are doing very, very well. But Maximus Stev is far too good for this league. We've got an incredible goalkeeper in James Trafford. We've had a couple young lads starting our defence, but CJ Egan-Riley is probably one of the most improved players this year. He's fantastic. So I think it's a combination of two things. I don't think we were particularly covered ourselves. I think we particularly covered ourselves in glory on Saturday at Norwich defensively. But yeah, I'm delighted with our defensive display. There's just a reason in defence, and that comes at a cost in that's the priority over scoring goals. The frustration for this season, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned opposing teams having a common complaint that they're missing a 20-goal a season striker. I suppose, what about your own team, Natalie? Because you've had to bring in Jay Rodriguez.
5-goal a season striker. I would like somebody to put the ball in the back of the net. But yeah, no, sorry, Gabs, carry on.
No. Well, I think because Jay Rodriguez has come into the side and done really well, and you've got to credit him for the way he spearheaded the attack. But also, he's 35; he's going to be very limited in what he can do at this stage. So, to what extent is that going to be the biggest factor that determines Burnley's automatic promotion chances, whether they bring the right striker in January?
Yeah, without. Yesterday was a little bit of a roller coaster up until the point where we scored the equaliser. Probably worst performance that we've put together this season. It was really abysmal. There are problems with this Burnley side at the moment, and I think last time we were on this show we had this same conversation. It's really, really difficult to talk about Burnley this season, and it's really, really difficult to analyse what's going on without sounding obnoxious, self-entitled football fan that is way above where they should be. It's really, really difficult because we're sitting in third. We are the meanest league in the country, the defend the country. But there's a reality that comes with that, and it is, quite frankly, some of the dullest, most uninspiring football I've ever watched in my life. And the reality is that football is both a results and an entertainment game. So at the moment, we are being asked as fans to sacrifice the result that hopefully Scott Parker gets us. We won't be automatic. We will not finish in the automatic. in the hope that he can get us through the playoffs and get us back into the Premier League at first asking. So we're being asked as fans to say, well, we're asking you to pay your money to turn up to, we're being asked to turn up and support our club at the cost of being entertained. And that's a difficult thing to ask football fans, because we love the game, because we love watching the game, and it's entertainment. It's an entertainment sport as well. Of one season, and that's all we can deliver this season, then fine, that's what we're doing. But that's not to say we like it. It's awful football. And the problem with that, and we had the same problem, I think, with Dyche, in that put up with bad football if the results are coming. But we have had a significant number of games, particularly at home this season, where we have played QPR, we have played Preston, we've played Blackburn. We've sat through 0-0 games with no shots on target. And it's like, well, that's all good and well, but these are lower league sides. If we'd have taken our chances, or we'd have performed better against those sides at Turf this season, we'd be 8 points clear now.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I just don't understand what we're doing. That's my biggest problem, trying to analyse Burnley this season and trying for an opinion as to what's going on. It's like, well, I don't know, because there's mixed messages. We're getting messages from our board saying we consider ourselves a Premier League club. We're just in a temporary holiday in the Championship this season. Well, selling all of your attacking threat and all of your Premier League squad, bringing in a squad that isn't as good as that, and a manager who plays very safe, very uninspiring football, and then doing 0-0 draws at home to lower league opposition, that doesn't correlate with the side saying we're going straight back to the Premier League and we're going to win the Champions League one day. So it's really, but we're third in the league, and if we get a striker in January, we might get. It's so difficult. I don't know what to say to you. It's really tough.
Yeah. Well, I think you've summed it up perfectly. We do have to finish there because we're a little bit pushed for time. Natalie, thanks so much for your insight on Burnley. Thanks to all our guests. Thanks to my lovely co-host, Ollie Mann. We'll see you again next week for another EFL debate on the Championship.